everybody. Welcome to DormInform. My name is Miles Hoffman, here in my dorm to inform you of the next upcoming artists in the music industry. Today we have Ellie Dixon. Ellie, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Okay, I am Ellie Dixon. I'm an alt pop artist, producer, general content creator, and I do it because I am constantly overflowing with a drive to create, both musically and generally. And this is the only way I can satisfy that.
Well, Ellie, I'm a huge fan of all the content you've been releasing on various platforms. First, starting off as I saw you over Instagram, a lot of your content kind of has been either going through the ups and downs of like the trends on the platform, including some of just your very quick edits and beat making takes on some of your covers for certain songs that are very current and just mainstream pop music. So I find that really cool, and I think we'll definitely dive into how you transition from that whole Instagram social media scene to one content creation on YouTube. Something we
Yeah.
really haven't talked much on the show, and I think it would be really cool for listeners to hear more about. And then two, how to get in as like a full getting into the whole full time music scene of going onto
Yeah.
streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, and then looking towards when we're in a post COVID world, maybe if there's an opportunity for bookings and other live attractions and opportunities, what that might seek. So, to start things off, what was it like starting out recording content? I presume it was either in just a room you had local to your house, or it was a friend's room or a friend's studio. I don't know what the deal was, but tell us the story behind making the first videos of Ellie Dixon content.
Wow. This is gonna take me right back. I'm a YouTube baby. I grew up on um this sort of primarily UK vlogging scene. So like Dan and Phil, Dodie, that was like my bread and butter. And then music creators like Paint was or now known as John Cozart was like one of the biggest inspirations. So I grew up watching musical content on YouTube, and YouTube was like the first place that I started posting to. Um, and yeah, I sort of slowly throughout my teens, I was slowly getting into music, and then I picked up singing, and then I started writing songs, started producing songs, and um, singing, writing, and producing sort of all kind of happened together. And then it just was the natural step to start making things for YouTube. That was always something I wanted to do. I had the family camera, and back when phones didn't have proper cameras on them. And yeah, just what was my first? I think my first proper YouTube video was a cover of Rather Be by Clean Bandit, and I put the most disgusting purple filter on it. You've never seen anything like it. And I loved it. And my friends were like, whoa, I didn't know she could sing. And yeah, it all just kind of kept going from there.
Sure. What was like the time frame it took from the first video you've released to people in a mainstream sense starting to pick up some of your content on whatever platform
Wow.
you first saw that growth?
Yeah, well, so that first video must have been when I was sort of like 15. Um, and on and off, I've been making content. I've produced three EPs. I produce an EP every summer during my years at university rather than making money at an internship. um, so I was always making things alongside education. Um, University A levels. I'd studied maths at uni, so I had absolutely nothing to do with music. So it was always competing with other things. So that was like on and off for 5 years, was me sort of trying to make YouTube content and then getting busy. And then so nothing was very regular, like 600 Instagram followers, like 400 YouTube subscribers. It was all super low numbers. And my YouTube following kind of grew a little bit because that was where I was putting most of my content, but really we were never past like 1,000 subscribers on anything. And really it's been this last year and a half. So I graduated from uni a year and a half ago, and I moved home to the family home so that I could kind of concentrate on doing music full time. And really it's just been like me focusing on posting and creating content and bringing my skills up, and it's just grown like crazy in response to that. And especially over the last 6 months, I mean, it's just insane. Everything's like, you know, multiplied up by tens. You know, it's all really grown, and that's just been from honing what I'm doing and getting better at what people like and getting better at making videos. And yeah, it paid off basically.
You're actually based in the UK, and right
Yeah.
now you guys are facing lockdown, and that's something that from in the US we're not really dealing with. So something that I guess that's a really great way to segue into a pretty good question of, do you think the lockdown in some ways has provided some sense of, it's given you more time to work on your craft as a musician and as like a content creator?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I sort of had an advantage in that I've always worked from home. My music setup is in my parents' bedroom. That I've never had a dedicated space, and I've always made things out of my bedroom. So really I've been in my element. And yeah, I think it's been a really great time because I wasn't able to gig, which took up a lot more time than I thought it did. And suddenly I wasn't gigging, and I was like, oh, I have way more time. And so basically, because I'm at home and not having to pay rent, I said, you know what, I'm going to focus on just making content. And I appreciate that I'm really, really lucky in being able to do that, because there's a lot of people with, you know, livelihoods at stake at the moment. So super grateful for that. And yeah, I just absolutely tunnel vision on just make, create, get yourself good at this,
Yeah.
basically.
And I think that mindset starts from a pretty young age, and from like, I mean, personally, I used to play music. I used to be a trumpet player and a piano player for a couple of jazz
Nice.
groups in high school. And when I first went to Belmont for college, I was like, I can't really see myself being a natural musician. Much rather be kind of in the business realm and understanding the relationships that are formed within various groups and people. So
Mm.
when you were younger, and before you went to university, was there like a sense of drive, or did you have a mindset of like, I want to do music in this full-time manner when I'm in college and then out of college?
It's really funny because part of me has always, like, in my brain, in the dark recesses of my brain, I think I've always just assumed I'm Beyonce and that's it. And I think there's been that like undying drive to create and be successful. And like I've no matter what I'm doing, I always want to create, and I always want to be productive, quote
Mm.
unquote, because you know that's such a vague thing. But I've always had drive to be creative. But in terms of actually having that, I want to do music full time. And that was one of the reasons I didn't study music at university, was because I was just coming into this world and I was gigging all around Cambridge, which is my hometown, which is kind of small. There's not like loads of huge venues. I'm like, you know, playing cafes and pubs and stuff. And
Sure.
I was producing from my bedroom, and I barely met anyone else in the industry. My confidence level was like through the floor. It really, like, my, in terms of my skills and my performing, I had terrible stage anxiety. And so I wasn't really aware of the industry. In my head it was like, you're either an artist or, you know, you're an accountant. Like, that was very black and white. And so it took me coming towards the end of uni was when I was really building up confidence. I'd got together a band with various people that I'd sort of come into contact with, and we formed a band, which was one of like the best 6 months of my life for just gaining confidence in ways I didn't know I could. And then yeah, I guess it was sort of towards the end of uni when I was gigging 3 times a week on top of all my maths assignments that I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do, isn't it? And I finally realized that I can do this, and I have the ability to just call myself a professional. You are like, I wouldn't call myself a producer. I produced 3 EPs over 3 years, and I refuse to call myself a producer because I didn't have that belief that I was good enough. And I think it just took a long time for that confidence to mature to a place where I could actually admit to myself that that was something that I could do and that I wanted to do.
Yeah. Something that I think you pointed out there that's something I want to flesh out is the use of like inspirations, or how artists kind of, what's their coming of age story. I know there's a coming of
Yeah.
age for just every individual, and it's like, okay, going off to college, being independent, that's like a huge step for any person, and understanding what it's like to be out there in the real world. But
Yeah.
something that I think not many people realize is that kind of also applies to musicians in some kind of way, or artists and producers such as yourself. And one thing that I noticed was, when I was also a YouTube baby in a lot of different ways, I looked at a lot. I've one looked into the side of gaming. Another side of me was always like interested in music and content creation, and also production, on constantly fidgeting around Logic Pro on my MacBook. But
Oh yeah.
something that I think really stuck out to me when the whole YouTube music scene started really pushing up was the sense of like DIY production. And I think a lot of your content kind of fits in that realm, but in ways has actually evolved from what used to be that old YouTube content that is in some ways very nostalgic to people. And a couple of
Yeah.
names that I that come to mind, two kind of different worlds, but in ways in the same one, are Andrew Huang, who
Yeah.
releases lots of awesome stuff that's just really in the world of DIY self production.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where he does it now. I think it's still in his home, and he really has decked out his studio for.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember when he first had his small little studio, and he just had a white backdrop and a ukulele, and he was singing about unicorns dancing on rainbows for like his
Oh my
couple
God.
first
Yeah.
videos. And then I think of like other guys like Jacob Collier. I mean, like Grammy Award winning, and yet has such a good understanding of how to layer a production and know what goes into a song. And it really shows through every live stream he does, humbly stating, yeah, I have hundreds of like tracks in this Logic session, and then I have to go and mix and master this later
Oh my
off
God.
camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of time and a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, with all that said, I'd be curious to know if you have drawn from either of those musicians as an inspiration, if there are others that have played a role in your content creation and production journey.
Yeah.
And with that, what do you think you do differently? What do you think that you bring to the table as another artist or musician in this industry?
That's such a good question. Gosh, yeah. So it's funny because, yeah, I watch Andrew Huang stuff and I'm like, damn, we have the same brain. I love it. But it's funny because I never grew up watching his stuff. I think the 3 main music YouTubers that I can sort of go, yeah, 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 like that was what I was feeding off at the time, was Dodie, who was doing harmony layering in her bedroom, and she was also well known for doing those DIY sounds. I listened to a lot of pentatonics, so that a cappella, loads of layering, and you can hear it now, my vocal harmony layering just all the time. I love it. And then I think the biggest one in terms of style is John Cozart, or Paint, who was always sampling weird sounds. And for like a young, overly creative, very imaginative teenager with ADHD. That was like my brain was just so happy with everything that he was making. And like he was making sort of funny songs. His he was well known for his Disney After Ever Afters and things. So
Yeah.
watching those, I was sort of drawn into this world of music not being this sort of like perfect, polished pop release, but it's like, oh, you're making a funny song that people just connect with, that's hilarious. You're making like popping noises with your mouth and suddenly it's a beat. It was like this fascination with music just being this completely experimental thing. And I think that that grew along with technology becoming available for people to use at home, because 30 years ago no one's dreaming of making a song
Yeah.
in their like bedroom from scratch, whereas now I think naturally the tools that have been made available to people have facilitated a lot more growth in that direction. So as my musical journey continued, I then found Andrew Hung and I found Jacob Collier, and I was looking at all these people like, oh my God, I relate to this so much and I really enjoy this and I feel like I'm doing something similar. And I think that that's just the natural result of everyone being exposed to similar trends online, and you're all watching the same things as you all start doing the same things. And it's really, it fills me with a lot of joy seeing people able to create whatever the hell they want to create by themselves in their bedroom with no time pressure on paying a studio fee, with no pressure of a producer sitting next to you going, you really gonna do that? It's you in your bedroom doing whatever the hell. And I mean, honestly, I've done some just dumb experiments, but I learned from that. And I think I'm so happy that this is the way that lots of music is going. And then in terms of what I bring to the table, it's hard. You put yourself, and this is something that I've only been able to do recently, is looking at these sorts of creators and being able to even relate myself to them rather than being like, oh, well, they're just better than me. They're just professional and I'm not. Whereas now I'm kind of thinking, okay, I'm similar. But yeah, I think what I bring definitely a more pop element for sure. I think sometimes we're really theory trained, musically trained, virtuoso brains can sometimes just be that little bit harder to grasp for people who are just starting out, or it becomes like more of a shining light of incredible knowledge, whereas I think I'm pretty self-taught in everything I do, in my production, in my music theory knowledge, in my musicianship. I had piano lessons and that was it. So everything that I've learned by doing. I've learned by, and whenever I create, I constantly ask myself how it makes me feel, why I'm doing it. And I think it's led to my production being very focused on just, what does this sound like? What does this feel like? I use my ear and I use my sort of not heart, that's really cliche, but like I'm very sensory. And so I think it means that the music I make is very accessible to the whole range of people, because it's coming from a place of just, how do I want people to feel, and I'm not thinking about making things sort of intellectual, I
Hmm.
guess. But I still, I have a lot of my following are musicians and other artists. So it's not, it seems to have hit a nice middle ground of like thought through, but yeah, accessible.
Yeah. I think there's that. Thank you for like just that was a great response to that question. First off,
Thank you.
I'm a little bit like speechless just because there's so many different ideas that I've thought about just with you explaining some of this stuff. So one thing is that the difference I think I see between this is coming from like a listener and a third party
Mm,
that differs you from other YouTube content creators that are in a similar vein to what you're releasing is I think you've gone through a different marketing approach with a lot of your content. I think dominantly
mm.
what I've seen is, during COVID, Space Out specifically got a huge like
Oh my gosh,
following
yeah.
specifically on Spotify. It was your number
Yeah.
one played song, but it's also pretty current. So
Mm,
to me, I view that as you made a huge push to be through playlisting and other ways of curation and whatever that might have looked like in a natural and wholesome way on a platform that's very collaborative and very
mm.
fan driven. Um, YouTube, in a lot of ways, I think is a lot more of a media or a culture behind each channel. The
Yeah.
whole idea of VidCon and other big shows happening where various internet personalities come and almost do like a conference as if they're a celebrity. There's a difference
Yeah.
between being a celebrity and being a creator. And I think
Mm,
YouTube has definitely gone in a different direction since it used to be what was the platform of creators. It's turned into a lot of
mm.
celebrities and a lot of personalities, to be honest, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. But I think the segueing avenue for at least that one release you did early 2020 makes a lot of sense of why it had such incredible growth. You had more time. It was a release
Yeah.
that happened where like I think the song works so well for when it came out. I think so many
Mm,
people were like, I just need a moment to breathe and not deal with everything going on. And
yeah.
I think the use of the lyricism behind it was so perfect. I'd love to detail a certain portion of the song soon. We're going to dive into one part that I just want to know creatively where you were at with the song.
Yeah.
And then a second thing that kind of came to mind was with your most recent release that's out into the public, where you worked with Austin Prince on New Waves. That
Yeah.
song specifically brings up the idea of collaboration. Up
Mm,
until this point, there wasn't really any other songs that you released out to people that was fully you and another artist working together
yeah.
to release a song. And I think if your whole audience or your fan base is made up of artists, in a lot of ways, they're looking at you and they're saying, she makes really good content and she's ready to go to the next level of who's the next person that we want to have as a collaborating artist on our EP or vice versa. Who do I want on my EP because I think that would be a really big benefit. To just me as an artist, to my fan base, it's really a great fan servicey tool that I've seen work really well. Um,
Mm,
and funny enough, something Jacob Collier has done quite a lot
yeah.
in, I know, especially in Jesse Volume 3, almost every other track on that
Oh yeah.
album is a collaboration. And
Mm,
his numbers only went up because he was working with other people. So
yeah.
I think Spotify has really benefited from that kind of world. And YouTube kind of has done that a little bit where you might have like, oh yeah, look, this is a YouTuber that's also on my channel, but there's no way in which both channels get credited. It's either
Yes.
a video that's posted on, let's say, Andrew Huang's channel, and then a video that's posted on, let's say, your
Yeah.
channel. You have to make two videos basically and then interchange them. I've noticed it as it's not really all that fan servicey. It's like people want
Mm,
to know that both content creators, both creators in general, both musicians are getting credited and I
yeah.
guess supported for their work in any way, shape, or form, if that makes sense. That was a lot
Mm.
of information, but I think something to kind of break it all down is I want to go into your song "Space Out," and I think there's one section if you're okay with me playing it,
Sure.
we're gonna switch on over to
Ooh.
this
Here we
and
go.
So I'm gonna just scrub over to one portion because I will let people go check it out on Spotify in their own time. You gotta get those plays. Okay. Anyway, um, there was one section here. I think it was just after the first chorus, maybe just second verse.
My favorite bit.
Yeah.
The second
Right.
one.
You can drive your car, I'll be in my spaceship. Mercury, Venus, I called that a day trip. Pulling up, you think you've got the right gears. You're doing miles, but I'm doing light years. Revving up your engine, but it's anticlimactic. Try follow me, but my passport intergalactic. Can't believe when I pull up in my UFO cosmic. Think you lost your jaw back there where you dropped it? And I know it's a bad habit.
Okay, just that section right there. First off, I don't like the beat. First off, I'm not super into like rapping necessarily. Like I'm not a huge rap hip hop guy, but I know
Yeah.
people say bars. That was bars easily. But as we just transition back here, I think one really cool part of that verse is again this sense of layering. Um,
Mm.
I can clearly tell some of the parts of the mix are just DIY. Ooh, this is a cool sound. This is a cool sound. And I know from the music video or like the production video, you point out certain parts of that in certain kinds of ways. Do you
Mm.
care to talk a little bit about that section? What it was like to produce it? It might be hard to flesh out one section of the song. If you want to talk about the full song and what it was like to make it, by all means. Um, or if you want to talk about the verse and tell me what was the creative process behind that, creative
Yeah.
freedom with this question, I guess.
So yeah, so the funny thing is that this song was born out of that verse. That was the first thing I wrote. And the reason I wrote it was around sort of early last summer, where loads of artists were putting out songwriting challenges. So they'd release the instrumental for their own songs and they'd say, right, play whatever you want over the top of it. And this was an instrumental put out by Blue Lab Beats. And I had been doing a bunch of these and I was finding it super useful for like completely no strings attached songwriting experiments and songwriting, just like getting to know myself and what I wanted to make and just trying things. And I just made a bunch of space puns and I thought I was absolutely hilarious and I was so proud of myself. And I got an influx of comments saying, can you make this a thing? So yeah, that second verse was why I made the song. And I think that's like most people's favorite parts. So I think you do get the feeling that that's when the song really comes into its own and that's where it was birthed from. Um, but yeah, in terms of the production, it took a couple of tries because obviously I'd written this verse over someone else's backing. I can't do that. So I had to completely remake it from scratch, which is really hard when you've already attached yourself to a sound. It's the hardest thing. It's so much easier to produce from scratch. So making this completely afresh was really hard, and I ended up changing up the chords. I changed everything, and yeah, I mean, it keeps the essence of everything that I love to do, which is DIY percussion. It's got me tapping a glass pen pot, and the snare is actually just a little pot of SD cards that I flipped over. And I love the sound. I love it so much. It's my favorite sample for a snare. And yeah, it was just a bunch of tappy things that I love to do. That was kind of I think I made that first actually on the production side because I love doing it. I have a problem. And then the large majority of that verse was then just kind of copy and paste from chorus and verse one, and I was just shoving in bits I like. And the great thing about rap, I was kind of similar to you. I was never really into rap, and the hip hop scene, I was kind of a folky, jazzy pop girl until 3 years ago, maybe. And I started getting into rappers like Anderson .Paak, which are very much like gateway rappers because they're melodic
Yes,
and
yes.
groovy, and you're not it melodically draws you in before you're worrying about, oh well, where's the melody, you know? And I think, and I got crazy into it, and like quite a high percentage of what I listen to now is rap, and I adore it, and I love the amount of expressive freedoms that you have with rap. And the other reason I didn't start it for a while as well, I honestly didn't start rapping until maybe this verse was probably the most rap I'd ever done. And a lot of it was confidence wise, and especially, you know, I'm like a posh white gal from Cambridge. Like, who the hell is, like, in my head, if I start rapping, everyone's gonna laugh at me because, you know, I'm not from the streets, you know. I'm not like, I've got no like hard childhood stories. My delivery is different. So I had to kind of find my voice in that.
Yeah.
And as soon as I found it and found that it was just me being a complete idiot, I had the most fun. Yeah, building the whole wrap up was so fun because you're layering, and you've got so many possibilities, and you can jump into melody for a minute, and it's, yeah, I had a hell of a lot of fun producing that verse. And the last thing I will say is that a lot of that rap, in particular in the way I produced it, was influenced by an artist called Barney Fletcher, who is a super cool rapper from the Midlands, I want to say. And he has an EP called, I think it's Canvas 2033, and it's like one of my favorite EPs
I'll
ever.
have to check it out.
Yeah, do it. It's so funny, and like his whole delivery is just dumb, and that's what I love. It's just completely not taking yourself seriously.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to give a really crappy pun for this, but to wrap things up, I guess I wanted to quickly go over some like future anecdotes of like, where do you think you'll be, I don't know, post-COVID, and give it a year. What do you
Yeah.
think you'll be doing as an artist? And what do you think you'll be creating?
Damn, that's a good question. I think everything's growing, which is awesome, and I can totally see things. I feel everything feels very positive and organic, and like there's real legs at the moment. So, I don't feel like I'm bragging to say that I think things are going to get a lot bigger, and they really, in my heart of hearts, I feel like things are really going to do well. So we've got a lot of exciting things coming, and things are going to get big, but I think at the heart of everything that I'm doing and that I want to do is I want to maintain creation, and still, you know, if I'm touring or I don't know, whatever, like I still want to make YouTube videos where I'm hitting saucepans. Like I still want to do that. I still want to be making little harmony experiments on Instagram. I think that creator part of me will never stop and will always want to do that. And I envisage myself helping other people do what I do as well. I want to give people the tools to figure out what I figured out, and you know, afford a microphone that my parents were able to buy me, you know, and giving people the tools to learn to produce and have the creative freedoms I've had, because I think that all that will do is make the world a better place. You know, being able to just make for the sake of it, I think is something that's so powerful and therapeutic and positive, and everyone deserves the chance to do that.
Well, thank you so much, Ellie, for finding the time to sit down and just talk everything about your career, what you're looking to aspire to do as an artist, and for telling all the DormInform listeners of what's to come. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.